and welcome to the Scriptures Are Real podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about times where the Scriptures have become real to us because that helps us gain more power from the Scriptures, and we need that power in our lives today. I'm your host, Kerry and I'm so excited about our guest today, a very good friend of mine and a colleague here at work in the Ancient Scripture Department, John Hilton, who runs his own podcast. Hopefully you can tell us a little bit about that, and who is a phenomenal teacher and one of the most productive people I know, and has a gift for taking, he's so intelligent, he can just take great complicated things and explain them in an understandable way, and at the same time be so loving and wonderful. It's just a privilege for me to work with John. So John, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Kerry. It is great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and about your podcast or whatever else. Maybe whatever you would like to tell us.
Well, you mentioned I'm on the faculty here at BYU. My wife, Lonnie, and I actually met at BYU about 20 years ago, and we've been...
Oh, look how old you're getting.
Yes, we're getting pretty old. Well, I am at least. We've lived around the country, and got 6 kids, and 2 of them are on missions right now, which makes it kind of an exciting time for us.
Yeah. I think one of them is serving where my brother served. Didn't we figure that out once in England?
Yes. So my daughter's waiting for her visa to get to England. So she's temporarily in Washington, D.C. But
good luck to her.
Yeah. Got a great family, and kind of professionally, I've liked to write. So I've written several books with Desert Book, most recently the book Considering the Cross, How Calvary Connects Us with Christ. And then you mentioned a podcast. So it's a podcast or a video series. So you can find it either wherever you get podcasts or on YouTube. It's called Seeking Jesus. And the focus is just finding Jesus Christ in a variety of different ways and drawing closer to him. So that's really fun.
You can't go too wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's a great need for that. Well, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And so let's just go ahead and jump in. We'll let you take us wherever you want to go. However, within reason, John. I know we have to kind of put that caveat on there for you. But anyway, wherever you want to go and however you want to get there. So what would you like to talk about today?
So I want to talk about a time when the Scriptures became real. This is in a location in Jerusalem. It's called the City of David, which I know you've been to many times, Kerry. There's tons of things that became real at the City of David, but I want to just zero in on one area, which has to do with a wall that sections of this wall date to the Persian time period. And that connects us with Nehemiah. So I'd love to just talk through some of the stories of Nehemiah, beginning in Nehemiah 1, and just fill everyone in on the background, but also some just really amazing scriptural nuggets that I think we sometimes just gloss over with the story of Nehemiah, that for me became very real as I'm sitting there by a wall that I don't know if Nehemiah himself is personally laying the bricks or if he saw those exact bricks, but it's the time period of Nehemiah, which makes me think, Nehemiah's in this vicinity, and I felt that real connection with him.
Yeah, some of those stones have to be from his project, whether he cut them or not. You're absolutely right. So, all right, let's jump in. I've got I'll probably, for those who are doing this via YouTube, I think I will share screen, and we'll just put the scriptures right up there, and I'll read from there. So
sounds great. Okay, so if we were to jump into Nehemiah chapter 1, the basic story is that Nehemiah is in a position of influence in the Persian king's dominion. So he's not in Jerusalem, but some of his buddies from Jerusalem come and they're catching up, like, hey, how are things going? And he says to them, well, it's been his friends say to him, it's been pretty discouraging in Jerusalem. The wall is cast down, everything's in shambles. So Nehemiah is really discouraged. The king says to him, hey, you seem discouraged. What's going on? Nehemiah says, well, I'd love to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the city. And the king says, great, I'll help you out. Here's some resources. Let's get to work. And the first verse I want to highlight is Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 12. Nehemiah says, I arose in the night, I and some few men with me, neither told I any man what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem. That first phrase, I think, is really powerful. What God put in my heart. So if I'm thinking I want to be like Nehemiah, I need to make space, create opportunities for God to put things in my heart. Ask him, what is it that you want me to be doing?
That's good. Good. And a great work comes out of his doing what God put in his heart.
Yeah, exactly. And just like, maybe you have something that God puts in your heart, doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. There's opposition that comes up. So if we flip over to verse 19, same chapter, when Sanballat, the Horonite, Tobiah, the servant, the Ammonite, Geshem, the Arabian, heard it, they laughed us to scorn and despised us and said, what is this thing you will do? So they're laughing at Nehemiah's idea of rebuilding the wall around Jerusalem. That's what God put into his heart. I'm going to rebuild this wall around Jerusalem. And chapter 3 is a chapter that we could easily skip over. If you kind of read through it, it's like, well, this group did this section of the wall, this group did this section of the wall, this group did that section of the wall. But there are some lessons in there, right? It takes a coordinated effort to do a big thing, everyone's help. And if you just skim through, there'll be names of people, and you're like, I've never heard of the son of Azbuk or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you're like,
Meshulam,
hey,
the son of Basodia. Yeah.
yeah, but that's like me, right? I mean, you and I were just like normal people. We're doing our little part of the effort. We're not famous. We're not going to change the whole world, but we can change our homes, our communities, make a difference where we are. And I just think that's beautiful. I also want to highlight verse 12. Next to him repaired Shallum, the son of Halohesh, the ruler of the half part of Jerusalem, he and his daughters. That's a great phrase. Sometimes we don't talk enough about the women who are also equally participating.
Yeah, and actually, it's rare that they would be, or at least that we read about them being part of what's basically construction work. And yet this seems to be an everyone's all in kind of project because his daughters are out there repairing, right?
Yep. Kerry, I don't want to like hog all the talking about this. You might want to mention, feel free to jump in. I'll just highlight two little phrases from chapter 4. One of my favorites is chapter 4, verse 10. As they're building the wall, Judah said, the strength of the bearers' burdens is decayed, and there is much rubbish. So we are not able to build the wall. So the first thing that they've got to do in order to be able to build the wall is clear out the rubbish. The old wall was destroyed by the Babylonians. And I can see you're smiling like already, isn't that like so rich in application in my life? Yeah. If I'm going to do what God has put into my heart, I probably am going to have to get rid of some rubbish so that there's room to do that building.
Yeah. And I think too often we don't think about that. Often we're going to have to create rubbish. Right. If you're going to build something good, you have to get rid of the stuff that's not as good. And we call that killing the natural man. Right. And that's what God wants. He wants to kill off some stuff. He wants to get rid of some parts of you and haul that rubbish out of your life, or parts of what you do, parts of how you think, parts of your patterns and whatever. You got to haul it out. I've read that a whole bunch of times. What a fantastic application, John. That's great.
Yeah, I love that. And then if we jump over, this is maybe one that we might be a little bit more familiar with. For 17, they which builded on the wall, and they that bear burdens, those related, everyone with one of his hands brought in the work, and with the other hand held a weapon. Yeah. Anything you want to share about that one?
Oh, you go first.
Well, just kind of the idea of being on the offense and the defense. They're building while they're defending themselves, because some of the enemies of the Jews are trying to hinder the work of rebuilding the wall. So we kind of think about that in our own lives. Maybe I'm trying to build the kingdom in a certain way, but I also need to be defending my family in a certain way, and that kind of a thing.
There are 1,000 applications. I think we live in a day where Satan is attacking us and our families on so many sides and in so many ways. So I'll just tell you the first thing that comes to my mind with that, and maybe it's silly and maybe people are tired of hearing about this, but it's something that is a very real issue in our family, which is the use of technology. And it can be so wonderful and so problematic. And it's hard to know where to find that balance. But I feel like we both have to defend against the bad things that can come into our lives through our phones. Let's just say our phones, but there are 1,000 different ways technology can bring stuff in your life. There are things we really have to defend ourselves against, whether that be pornography or just distraction. But at the same time, that phone can be used to do so much good. It can be a weapon both to defend, but also to do good, right? We're talking the defense. The weapon that they're holding is for defense, but they're building a wall, right? Which is also for defense, but it's also building a great work. And it's something I've been trying to encourage in my family and the youth of my ward. Like we all have these moments where we just you're bored and you're going to pull out your phone and do something. And if we can make our first impulse to do just like two good things, like text someone who you think maybe could use a nice word, and watch something on the Circles app, or do some family history work, do something good with it. And then so we're both defending and building at the same time. That's just one teeny example of how we need to do that. I'm sure you have more. You're the master at this kind of thing, but that's one of the things that came to my mind as you were talking.
Beautifully
You're supposed
said.
to do more talking than me. Why are you having me talk so much?
I learned everything I know from you, Kerry.
Well, you don't know much then.
Let's flip over to chapter 6. This is a great chapter. Now it came to pass that when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arabian and the rest of our enemies heard that I had builded up the wall, and that there was no breach left thereof, that Sanballat and Geshem sent unto me, saying, Come, let us meet together in some one of the villages in the plain of Oh No. Now, a little teacher joke there. When someone wants to meet you in the plain called Oh No, that's not good, right?
Yeah.
And you see that the last sentence in verse 2, but they thought to do me mischief. And I sent messengers unto them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease whilst I leave it and come down to you? So again, one of like the great principles there is, if God has really put something into my heart, I'm doing it not because I have to, not because my mom told me I need to, but this is like, I really feel it. This is God's work. Then when a variety of temptations and discouragements come my way, I'll have the spirit of Nehemiah in me. I'm doing a great work. Like, I can't come down. Like, I'm doing what God wants me to do. That is a really powerful principle. Now, if we keep going, verse 4, they sent unto me 4 times after this sort, and I answered them after the same manner. Now, I see a little kind of parallel here with the story of Lehantai in Alma chapter 47. If you remember the story, Amalickiah is in control of part of the Lamanite army. Lehantai is leading the other part of the Lamanite army, and they're high up on a mountain. And Amalickiah says, Lehantai, come down and talk to me. Lehantai says, no. And so he answers yes a second time, the third time, both times Lehantai says no. On the 4th time, Lehantai says, okay, I'll come down a little bit. And I think it's so, and then within a short while, Lehantai is killed by Amalickiah.
Yeah,
I think it's so interesting.
Is now leading a great wicked army.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So the difference between Nehemiah and Lehantai, so to speak, is what they did on the 4th time. They both resisted the temptation the first, the second, the third time. So to me, that's a great message around how will you and I resist temptation, metaphorically speaking, on the 4th time or the 40th or the 400th time. And I think that's an area where Nehemiah is a hero. God's work is so deep in his heart, he just really can't be shaken from that.
That's good. And if we're going to tie this together with the Lehantai stuff, I mean, Amalickiah can't get Lehantai to come all the way down the hill, but he can get him to come down a little ways, right? I can kind of imagine Sanballat saying, okay, well, let's meet in a village closer to you, right? And maybe we'll meet here, right? And Nehemiah saying, no, not coming down at all. But so often that's when we're caught, is when we come down just a little bit, right? I'll agree with the prophet on all of these things except this one. This one, I'm not so sure about what the prophet's saying. Well, sooner or later, you're gonna get poisoned by degrees, right? If you come down that little ways, as opposed to learning from Nehemiah, as you said. So, what are some ways that you've seen this kind of working in your life, or people you know, or whatever? How have you seen this playing out, John?
So, I mean, I think a lot of ways just has to do with kind of life goals that a person sets for themselves. So Maybe like a personal example for me is learning languages. Later, so I served an English speaking mission, but later in life, I learned how to speak Spanish. And then later still, I learned how to speak Chinese. And in both times, like it's a major initiative, as you know, to develop fluency in another language. And no one like came out and discouraged me or tried to attack me in a plane, the plane of oh no, to prevent me from working languages. But there's lots of other distractions, right? I'd be tired one day. I'm like, oh, while I'm driving, do I really want to listen to my Chinese pod stuff that I'm supposed to be doing, or would it be more fun just to listen to some music or listen to the news or something? But because I really felt on both those occasions that God had put it into my heart, John, you need to learn Chinese. John, you need to learn Spanish. That then when other temptations came my way or distractions, I was always say, no, I'm really doing this. And that has been a big blessing for me.
That's great. Good. Thank you.
So the last verse that I want to highlight, maybe the last two verses that I want to highlight from Nehemiah. So this is not easy, right? Even though he's doing the work, there's a lot of challenges and opposition. And I love the very end of verse 9. Nehemiah says, now
so we're still chapter 6?
Yeah, still chapter 6.
Okay, sorry.
Now therefore, oh God, strengthen my hands. And so we can't do it alone. There's going to be times when you're tapped out. And I love Nehemiah's brief prayer, strengthen my hands. And if you flip over, or just drop down to verse 15, the Lord does. So the wall was finished in the 25th day of the month, Elul, in 52 days. And Nehemiah accomplishes the work that God set out for him to do. And we've kind of been going through it, but I just feel like there's so many life lessons here. Let God put something into your heart, clear out the rubbish in your life, not just for the purpose of getting rid of the rubbish, but so you can do what God has told you to do, and then stay firm in that focus. I love Nehemiah. And so there's this one spot that we've been talking about at the City of David where you can sit, look at that wall. And I love to sit there, read through these chapters, and just kind of in my mind's eye, imagine Nehemiah, try to feel what it would have been like to be him, and then what I would do in my life if I had that same spirit, drive, and dedication that he does. And that's kind of where I'm hoping to be.
That's fantastic. And it's as it becomes real to you like that, when you're sitting there thinking and you read this, I mean, you start to think of, he's got a ton of people working on this, right? And 52 days is really pretty remarkable. There are very few construction projects that are finished in 52 days.
Mm-hmm.
And especially it's actually harder to tear down and then build up, which is what they're having to do rather than just build, right? If you got a new, fresh place, you can just build. That's faster than, okay, well, we got to fix this. We got to add to this. We got to get rid of that. It's an impressive time period. But I think it's because there were tons of people involved in this. Like you got everyone there working on it. And that also, I think, has some powerful lessons in it as we're involved in this great work. Don't go it alone. You already brought in, we certainly need to have God strengthen our hands. But we've got all sorts of folks that we can turn to and work on this together. And that's so much better than working on it on our own. So I think that's another great lesson to learn from this. I love to picture all the busy industry that was happening with that wall when you go through that list of people you were talking about. Well, thank you. A lot of times we pass over Nehemiah. We don't know a tremendous amount, but this is a real guy, and all the people working there, even now I've forgotten the name of the fellow and his daughters, but they're all real. And I think one other thing I'd like to ask you about this. It's interesting to me that you had these people who lived around that area. Shalom is the one, Sanballat is the one we hear about the most, but you've got all sorts of people that are living around that area that really weren't bugging these guys too much until they started to get engaged in a great work. And then you see enemies coming out all over the place. Do you see any lessons for us in that? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, that's a great little nugget there. I mean, we see sort of the same thing in the life of Joseph Smith and many of the other prophets, right? Sometimes it seems like Satan's content just to let sleeping dogs lie. But if someone's trying to do a great work, then Satan wants to stop that. And so the opposition will arise. That's a great principle.
Sometimes even just when you've decided you're going to the temple that day, Sanballat and all the Arabians will come out, right? And I shouldn't say Arabians. That's just because they were mentioned in the scripture. I don't really mean Arabians, but
Metaphorically speaking, the people who are
speaking.
trying to, right? Gotcha.
Yeah. Or when you're trying to, you've decided to go on a mission, man. Everyone all these metaphorical enemies will suddenly arise and try and stop you, or you're trying to do good and something new in this calling, and 1,000 things will happen. It seems like they're all combining to stop you. I think often when you've decided to do something really good, as you said, the sleeping dogs don't lie anymore. So,
yep.
Well, that's good stuff. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate it.
So fun to be with you. Thanks for letting me join the podcast today.
It is my pleasure. And we hope that our audience will go and check out John's podcast. Tell us one more time what it's called.
Seeking Jesus. Yeah, love to see you there.
And I don't know what better we can do than seek Jesus. And I hope also as you listen to this that you will find some things that we talked about so many principles so quickly. You'll find some things in there that you'll want to write down and work on, whether that be finding other people to work with, or how you're going to defend your family, or how you're going to not be distracted, or whatever it is. You choose what you were inspired, what God put into your heart to work on today, and do something about it. And if you can think of someone who might benefit from this or who might enjoy it, then please share with them. We want as many people to be edified by Nehemiah and John Hilton as possible. So spread the word. And again, thank you, John. And we hope that everyone has a great day.
Thank you.